for this week's Reddit reply, we're going to do something a little different because there hasn't been a lot on Reddit, to be completely honest. I think everyone's kind of getting ready in America for the holiday weekend. Hopefully, everyone has a good one. And I think everyone's just kind of ready for the next cycle to happen. But Fantasy Flight Games did have a live stream, and they talked a bit about Marvel Dagger and Marvel Champions. So I want to talk a little bit about that first. So over on Reddit, this just went up not that long ago, 24 minutes ago from recording this. And this is on Wednesday. I'm recording this. So they did a full recap, and you can see it here. It's on Hall of Heroes, and they took pictures. And if you scroll up, you can actually watch the whole video. And if you're interested in Marvel Dagger, it's worth checking out. I didn't really like it. It was fine, but it was nothing amazing looking for me. Maybe if I could find it on sale, I would pick it up for fun. But it seems kind of expensive for what it is. But anyway, into the Marvel Champion stuff is worth listening to. I think there's some really kind of cool stuff. And luckily, Hall of Heroes pulled some quotes, and I figured we would just kind of go through these quotes really fast because there is some fascinating stuff in here. So it's Caleb and Tony both doing this, both the senior game designer for this project now. Tony, this is my first Marvel Champions box I got to work on as part of the Champions line, because before he worked on the Mojo Mania, and I'm not sure if he worked on Heroes or not, or if he kind of did, but this was like his first like big box, which is nice. Player size schemes are a brand new type of card introduced this expansion. All but one of them have per player amount of threat and a per player reward. So it's like a team effort. There's a restriction in a 1 and 2 player game. There's only one in play at a time. And in the 3 to 4, there's 2. It's funny that they talk about this restriction a lot. And they mentioned this a bit in the video. They think this is going to be like the leveling factor for this size scheme thing. I feel like for a one-player game, you're going to be able to crank to those side schemes, those player side schemes when you want to. Like, it's not going to be that difficult, which is, I'm not complaining or anything. It's just funny because it'll be interesting to see, like, when we actually get it in hand, what it's like. But I feel like for most players who play solo and kind of get the general gist of it, you'll be able to use the side scheme kind of whenever you want. Like, it's not going to be that much of a challenge. And it feels weird that they brought this up a few times with the restrictions of, well, you're only allowed to have one in play in a one-player game. It's like, that's fine. I'll just put one in play each round because I'm going to just clear it out that fast. So it'll be interesting once you get it in hand, how it actually does work. But it's funny. They brought this up quite a few times now, in several different places. Caleb mentions that for me, it's been a long time coming. Even before Tony was brought on board, this was something me and Boggs had talked about. We're getting to the point eventually where we're making player side schemes. They did this back in Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, some of the side schemes were just completely useless. Some were okay. And it feels like they went a step further to like really improve upon the Lord of the Rings side schemes, right? Lord of the Rings, they were okay. There was a couple of decent ones, not fantastic, but decent ones. It feels like they wanted player side schemes to be like a major, let's think about this type of decision that you make in the deck building process, which I think is a good thing overall. So we're getting to the point eventually where we're talking about making player size games. It often breaks into teams. Like this team is going to hold off Thanos, and that team is going to get the magic gem. Player size schemes kind of represent that. Like it's our chance to keep the villain busy. Tony got excited and he came up with some really good ones. Again, it's interesting how they position this of that like player side schemes would be this crazy thing you're doing off to the side. Now, if there's a lot of side schemes on the table, then yeah, this could be a challenging thing that comes up. But like again, I always focus mostly on solo. Side schemes for most players aren't going to be that hard to deal with, right? Realistically. So it is funny, again, how the position, like, oh, it's going to be a choice between the one or the other. And like, if you've been playing this game long enough that size schemes are kind of a big enough thing, like this shouldn't be too hard for you to balance out. So it's interesting, again, that this keeps coming up with the limits and what you're going to focus on. Like, it's fascinating. And that's why I think from this box, like I was a little worried about side schemes because maybe they're a little too powerful, but I don't know. Maybe they play tested it like really well and they are going to be perfectly balanced fine. I'm really excited. The more they talk about it, and especially in the video, like the more they talk about it, the more hyped I get. So I'm kind of excited for that. It was asked if we're running out of ideas. It says, no, I don't think we're running out of ideas. I call back to working with Michael Boggs years ago. We mapped out this long road of content. We haven't reached the end of what we mapped out. All right, this was Michael Boggs. They haven't reached the end of that. Tony's on board. He's coming up with ideas, and so far Tony's idea seems like pretty legit, pretty decent. It'll be interesting to see if he does some like solo hero pack or does more solo hero packs. Let me phrase this: gets a bunch of hero packs under his belt, and like you could see like the progression, or if he kind of like gets a little stale after a while, right? Like I'm not saying he's going to, but it'll be fun to watch like his growth in the game as he does more and more and more. So this game could go on indefinitely. This is what a lot of Marvel Champion fans hope, and I think if you look at something like Marvel Legendary, right, like that game has been going on for quite some time at this point. So I'm going to assume this game is still selling well. Even for me personally, when I talk to Twitch chat, when I live stream, or talk to my YouTube chat, there's usually once a week a person or two, maybe three, that come in that are like, oh, I'm just getting into this game now. And it's kind of cool to see that there's still people like just getting into this game now, because for us to have been a part of it for years now, we're like, oh, like, is anyone else really enjoying this, or like people willing to catch up with this? It seems so, which is really, really cool. And it seems like, again, they've had plenty of ideas. Caleb and Michael Boggs in general, I really trust with their game design. And if we are still not even through a bunch of their stuff. And Tony seems pretty good so far. And again, I'm not trying to say like, oh, he's gonna be bad down the road or anything like that. I'm just saying everything we've seen so far from Tony is pretty darn good. There's a lot of legs left in this game then, and that should be, for all fans of this game, should be really exciting that we have a game that, you know, won't get stale, won't get boring, that they're coming up with new ideas. You know, it's kind of funny because when Michael Boggs kind of left the team, a lot of people worried what would happen to Marvel Champions, and they brought Tony on. They're like, and I think him coming in with a fresh set of ideas and helping to push things in different directions, you know, could be really good for this game and can really help. And maybe this is something they'll do down the road, and have some more fresh ideas and different things going on. So Tony mentions that Domino was a favorite of many playtesters, capturing the feeling of luck. I don't have superpower luck. Building a character that feels like we can cheat luck. It felt fun to get that right. Domino always looked fun to me. She's still probably the hero I'm most excited for because I think her mechanics look pretty cool. Are there any specific X-Force comic runs that inspired this box? There were a number of inspirations. I think it was Rick Remender's run. Domino, I got inspiration from her kit, from her solo book written by Gail Simone. I love the relationship between her and Diamondback, which is cool that, like, again, they're taking inspiration from different things. Tony, with the introduction of player side schemes, I wanted to have them in the campaign. There are 4, later mentioned to be 6, player side schemes for the campaign specifically. They can't be used outside the campaign, which is really cool, right? I don't want to say it was a complaint, but one of the things that we've learned about, and I think it was from Boggs, and I believe it was a chat he did when he left. He made a comment that oh, what's his name? The guy that used to be the head of Fantasy Flight Games Studio basically had them design a quick campaign for Marvel Champions Rise of Red Skull, right? There was never supposed to be a campaign, and Andy Navarro, I think, from what I remember from the interview, basically told them, like, no, we should have something, and they just kind of threw it together. And if you play the campaign Marvel Champions, it does feel thrown together, right? But each iteration of it, I think, has been generally better. Guardians, of course, was a misstep, but that's fine, right? It was a fine misstep. They learned a lot. I think we can see that they learned a lot, because things like the Sinister Motives campaign, I think, is phenomenal. I think the xmen campaign was really, really good, right? Like, all that stuff I think was really good. I think they're working more in that space and doing more interesting things. And then they have side schemes that are just specifically for the campaign. It shows that they're putting more and more focus on the campaign, which is really cool to see, right? That personally makes me very excited. So I'm really hyped for it. Like, I'm really hyped for their campaign. I think each time they do it, it gets better and better and better. And maybe they are putting more of a focus on the campaign. I don't know for sure, but it'd be pretty cool if they were. If you complete the player side scheme in the scenario, you'll get support in the future campaign scenarios. So a lot of people have wondered what would be like the hook for the campaign. That's probably gonna be a part of it, right? Because each campaign and all the boxes are a little bit different. Mutant Slayers can be used in any scenario, but this is something where, and I told Tony to put in the Nasty Boys. This is something we're going to be exploring more in expert mode. For people who are playing in expert mode and looking for more of a challenge, you'll occasionally find abilities like this. So they talked about one of these cards, and I think it's down here. Can we see it? This one, right? Can we just open it? There we go. So in expert mode, this card gains Insight 1, which this is a fun design space that they've played around with a little bit, right? Just like a few mods, I think, had a couple cards on it. But it's nice to see this, that, like, it's a decent card, right? If Juggernaut exposed If Juggernaut exposes in play, flip it and place 1 momentum counter on Juggernaut. Otherwise, place threat in the main scheme equal to Juggernaut's attack. Right? Not a great card. But in Expert, it gets a little tougher, right? They're not going crazy with like surges or anything like that, but they're getting a little bit tougher. So that's pretty cool to see. And that's a big design space right there. There's a lot they can do in that space. So that's cool. I love this game since the core set was designed, so being able to work on it is now a pleasure. When Tony was talking about this, it was kind of cool because you could tell he really enjoys it. He's really passionate about it. And overall, and Caleb kind of mentions this, that Tony and I have been friends for like 7 years now, probably more. He played Test Lord of the Rings with me, so we've known each other for a long time. There's definitely a good bond between Tony and Caleb, and I think that always is inherently a good thing, right? When coworkers can get along really well, can work well together, I think that's really cool. I think that's really great. They seem to play well off of each other on camera. If they're faking it, they're very, very good at it. I highly doubt they are. But it's cool to see, right? It's cool to see that they're able to really kind of feed off each other. It seems like, again, Tony is given a decent amount of space to explore new ideas, that they're not just basing everything off of Caleb and Boggs' old design. Yes, the ideas are there, but they're letting them tweak it, maneuver it, change things about, and letting Tony have some space. And I think Tony has done some good design work, so that's really cool to see. The only thing worth mentioning about this is that next evolution will have an OP kit of some kind, similar to Mutant Genesis with some changes. This was thrown in at the very end. And it's kind of funny because it was like very quickly brought up, like when they were pretty much done. Because I think they know that this is not that popular and wasn't well received. And again, they didn't the changes they didn't really mention. It's not like it's going to be readily available to people. You're still going to see the eBay prices. You're going to still see this and that and the other thing. Like, it's still not great, right? Like, it's still going to have to track these things down. So that part stinks, right? That part stinks about it. But yeah, they're gonna keep doing it, and I guess if there's a market for it, they'll keep going through it. But anyway, it's worth, again, listening to this whole unboxing live stream. There's other stuff they talk about. Those are just some of the highlights that Hall of Heroes pointed out. But if you watch this, was there anything that you picked up on that you want to talk about? Make sure to mention down in the comments. All right, so now the Reddit, I want to introduce someone to the game. I think a beginner Spider-Man deck should be mandatory. I mean, maybe. I think what should be mandatory is basically whatever hero they're interested in and let them build off that hero. I think in general, you should be a well-rounded hero if you're helping someone in the game. This is kind of how I've played with others and introduced in the game, is I'm usually like Captain Marvel or Captain America, someone that can really control the board state well and, keep everything in check. Basically, keep the scheme down, keep side schemes out, and take care of minions, and let them focus on punching the villain in the face, because that's fun, right? That's a lot of fun. So that's how I've always approached it. Spider-Man can generally do that stuff, like with hitting the villain a decent amount. So I do see the argument that he's pretty good at that. And again, you play a hero that is more balanced than everything else. So it can be a good introductory hero. I don't know what the best is. Let me know what you think the best hero is introductory wise. For me, Spider-Man could be up there. I also think Captain America is a really good one, just because he's so iconic and it's pretty good. I think if somebody doesn't mind learning Iron Man and understand that there's like a bit of a curve there, I think they can actually be a pretty fun hero. But the person who's trying to keep the game like stable for the other person that's learning the game, you got a lot of work to get through during that game. So that's the only bad thing, but it just is what it is. All right, any advice for some sleeves which don't cost the earth but are pretty good protection? So this stuff is always weird to answer, because here's the thing. Expensive sleeves are expensive because they're really good at protecting cards and they last a long time. If you don't want to pay as much, they're not going to be as good as protecting the cards. Like, there is a reason why expensive cards cost more, or expensive sleeves cost more, right? Like, I understand that everyone's trying to find this super sweet spot where like they're super cheap yet they're really amazing. If they were really amazing, they would charge more to make more money, right? Like, just realistically. Now, I've used Sleeve Kings before, and I people just mentioned, or there's only one comment on so far with Game Genic. They mentioned it. I've heard they're fine, right? If you can get the large packages, I've heard that they're pretty good, and I've heard people say that the sizes are off. That don't get the Game Genic with the like the stuff on the back, right? With other stuff on the back. Because that stuff peels off. I've heard people say that Game Genic gets really tacky after like a couple dozen plays, right? Sleeve Kings, for me personally, gets really tacky, that like I'll try to lift up one card and like 3 of them will be stuck together. Like it's really frustrating that I have to like unsleeve and re-sleeve. And even though they were cheap sleeves, I ended up re-sleeving those cards constantly, right? Like, so I've played this game since for 2 some years now, and I did a little bit with whatchamacallit, Sleeve Kings, and then for the past year and a half or so, I've played exclusively with Dragon Shield. With Sleeve Kings, I would re-sleeve your double cards all the time, like probably at least once a month, probably twice a month, realistically, like nonstop. And this was over a period of like a few months. I was just doing this, like nonstop re-sleeving these. Now, since then, for playing with Dragon Shield for well over a year, close to 2 years, probably at this point, I have re-sleeved those doubles once. So again, if I would have stayed on the Sleeve Kings route, like maybe it wouldn't have been expensive, but I would have had to re-sleeve a lot of my cards by now. And with Dragon Shield, I've only re-sleeved the doubles and the standard set because again, standard set gets thrown in almost every single game. The doubles get thrown in almost every single game as well. And it wasn't even like they were going bad completely. It's like they were getting like a little wavy at the top. And I was like, that's silly. Like I have some extra ones lying around. Might as well use them. I use Dragon Shield. I know that they're expensive. If you're going to buy them from eBay. You can buy large, like 10 packs of 100 sleeves for like $7 a box at a time. This is much cheaper than like anywhere online where I see it's like $10, $11. So I know it's expensive, but they last a really, 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 really long time. I know some other people use like katanas or something like that, and Pro KMC. I don't know. They use some other like really high end, like at the same level as Dragon Shield. I've heard they're really good too. I don't want to like make it sound like those sleeves aren't good. I've heard they're really good too. But if you're really getting into this game and you're gonna play this game a lot, I do think it's worth investing in premium sleeves. I really do. I know it's expensive. I know that part stinks, but I do think it's worth investing in premium sleeves because if you just get cheap sleeves, you are gonna replace them a lot. They're gonna be tacky. They're gonna rip. They're gonna break. It's just a lot of hassle. It's just a lot of hassle, and then you're gonna keep replacing them to the point that you probably are gonna end up losing money. At least that's my thought process. Maybe you disagree. Let me know in the comments. But anyway, that's how I approach it. All right, defeating a villain with Retaliate. Last night I was playing Rocket against Ultron. He had Retaliate attachment, and Rocket was at 1. I used Die Bomb or whatever the 7 damage red card is for lethal. I wouldn't right because Ultron no longer retaliates. Correct. He no longer retaliates. He is knocked out, so thus he can't retaliate. I've always got tripped up on that too when I first started applying it. Like, oh, he makes like one final attack before he dies, right? Like, no, it's not that. Like, once he's done, he's done. You don't have to worry about it. So that's always a good thing to note in general. All right, one more question. Attack on the mansion characters. So really, I guess it was in X-Men, they started using the word character more. Again, character is anything, right? Good guy, bad guy. That's what makes like a mansion attack so fascinating, is that it affects not only you, but affects the villain as well, which is really kind of cool. I really like the design that they did for mansion attack. But yeah, we're getting to the point now where like actually knowing what a character is important, because a lot of times we don't worry about those things because we just think of things as hero and villains. I'm sure we're going to be seeing more stuff like this in the future. But yeah, character is everyone. All right, so once again, let me know your comments if you watched that live stream from Fantasy Flight Games. Let me know what your thoughts were, if there was anything that stood out to you. One thing quick note, and I don't know if this is just me being me, but near the end of the video, they make a comment about being at Gen Con and like stuff going on at Gen Con, and Caleb kind of like laughed a little bit, and then he makes a comment like, yeah, I'm gonna be there, and they were like, oh, we have some events planned. So I don't know if they have something big planned at Gen Con. I feel like they do. I feel like Caleb does not have the best poker face, and I don't know if Caleb watches these videos, but I'm on to you, man. I feel like there's something happening there at Gen Con, which makes me excited. I should really go, and I need to figure that out. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave comments down below on any of the questions or any of the red stuff, especially the unboxing stuff. Let me know your thoughts and all that. And if you want to watch last week's Reddit reply, it's right here. We covered who is better, Wolverine or Doctor Strange. Spoiler alert, it's Wolverine. Of course, Doctor Strange is terrible. He's completely mid.